In the bustling heart of San Francisco, where the fog rolls in like a whisper from the Pacific and the skyline pierces the sky with gleaming towers of innovation, Aisha Thompson lived a life that blended seamlessly into the city's vibrant mosaic of cultures and ambitions. At just 10 years old, with skin the color of rich earth and eyes that sparkled with an unquenchable curiosity, Aisha was the daughter of Jamal Thompson, the dedicated janitor at Technova, a cutting-edge tech company specializing in artificial intelligence solutions that promised to revolutionize everything from healthcare diagnostics to urban traffic management. Her mother, Maria, an immigrant from Mexico who had fled economic hardship to build a new life, worked as a part-time language teacher at a local community center, instilling in Aisha a profound love for words and tongues from around the world. Every morning, as the sun crept over the Golden Gate Bridge, Aisha would wake up in their modest apartment in the Mission District, surrounded by stacks of books, borrowed from the public library, dictionaries in Mandarin, novels in Spanish, grammar guides for French and Arabic, and her trusty headphones plugged into podcasts that transported her to distant lands, where she practiced mimicking accents and phrases until they flowed like second nature. She had taught herself Chinese through online apps and conversations with neighbors in Chinatown, Spanish from her mother's bedtime stories and family gatherings, and even dabbled in coding languages on free educational sites, blending linguistic prowess with a budding interest in technology that made her feel like she could decode the world's secrets. Jamal, with his calloused hands and warm smile, would often sneak her into the Technova building after hours, letting her explore the empty offices while he mopped the floors, and it was there, amid the hum of servers and the glow of screens, that Aisha first glimpsed the high-stakes world of corporate deals, overhearing snippets of conversations about algorithms and investments that fueled her imagination. Little did she know that her hidden talents would soon thrust her into the spotlight, turning a routine day into a pivotal moment that would alter the course of her life and the fate of an entire company. It started on what seemed like an ordinary afternoon, with Technova teetering on the edge of financial ruin after a series of failed product launches and mounting debts that threatened to shutter its doors, laying off hundreds of employees who had poured their hearts into building AI tools for a smarter future. The boardroom on the 25th floor was a pressure cooker of anxiety, filled with executives in tailored suits, their faces etched with worry as they awaited a crucial delegation from Beijing investors ready to inject $30 million into Technova's flagship AI project, a neural network designed to predict market trends with unprecedented accuracy, but only if the negotiations went flawlessly. CEO Elena Vargas, a sharp-minded woman in her 40s with a reputation for turning startups into unicorns, paced the room, her heels clicking against the polished hardwood floor, while the hired interpreter, a seasoned professional fluent in Mandarin and English, stood ready to bridge the cultural and linguistic gaps, but disaster struck without warning. Just as the delegation arrived, escorted by security through the lobby where Jamal was polishing the marble counters, the interpreter clutched his chest in the hallway, collapsing from a sudden stroke that left him gasping for air. Paramedics summoned but still minutes away, their sirens a distant wail echoing through the city streets. Panic rippled through the room like a virus. Executives exchanged frantic glances, phones buzzing with urgent texts, as the Dubai investors know, wait, these were from China, their expressions stern and expectant, dressed in crisp business attire that spoke of old-world discipline mixed with new-world ambition, demanding the meeting proceed without delay or risk losing the deal that represented Technova's last lifeline. Without this infusion of capital, the company would default on loans, investors would flee, and over 1,000 jobs, including Jamal's, would vanish into the ether of Silicon Valley's cutthroat economy. In the midst of the chaos, Aisha, who had been tagging along with her father that day because school was out for a teacher in service, slipped into the boardroom unnoticed at first, her small frame dwarfed by the massive conference table laden with contracts and laptops displaying intricate data visualizations of AI models. She had been in the break room, munching on a granola bar and listening to a podcast episode on advanced Mandarin idioms when she overheard the commotion and peeked in, her heart pounding as she realized the gravity of the situation. The executives, desperate and out of options, initially dismissed her as a child intruding on adult matters. "Get that kid out of here!" barked one VP, his face flushed with frustration. But Aisha stood her ground, her voice steady despite the tremor in her knees, declaring loudly, "I can help! I speak Chinese and Spanish fluently, and I understand tech terms from my dad's stories and online tutorials." Gasps filled the room. Elena Vargas, pausing mid-stride, locked eyes with the girl, weighing the absurdity against the ticking clock. As the Chinese delegation murmured among themselves, their leader, Mr. Li Wei, a shrewd businessman with a portfolio spanning Asia's tech hubs, whispering in Mandarin about the irregularity of it all. Words that Aisha caught and understood perfectly. With no other choice, Elena nodded curtly, signaling the security guards to stand down, and Aisha stepped forward, her backpack slung over one shoulder, clutching a notebook where she had scribbled vocabulary lists, her mind racing through conjugations and technical jargon like neural networks, machine learning algorithms, and data encryption protocols that she had memorized from free Khan Academy videos. As the meeting commenced, Aisha positioned herself at the end of the table, her heart hammering like the foghorns in the bay, translating Mr. Aisha Li's opening remarks with precision, capturing not just the words but the subtle nuances of respect and caution embedded in his tone, explaining how the investment would fund scalable AI infrastructure to compete with giants like Google and Tencent. When the discussion delved into complexities, liability clauses for data breaches, intellectual property rights in cross-border collaborations, and integration challenges with existing blockchain systems, Aisha didn't falter. She paused only briefly to clarify ambiguities, asking in flawless Mandarin, "Do you mean regulatory compliance under GDPR equivalence or export controls for AI hardware?" Which earned a nod of approval from Mr. Li, his initial skepticism melting into intrigue as he cracked a rare smile, appreciating her cultural insight into Confucian principles of harmony in business dealings. She even added value by suggesting a minor adjustment to the contract's cultural adaptation clause. Drawing from her knowledge of Spanish-speaking markets in Latin America where Technova hoped to expand, translating back to English with the same poise, her voice clear and confident amid the room's stunned silence. Whispers erupted among the executives. "How is a kid doing this better than our pros?" one murmured, while another noted, "She's not just translating, she's negotiating." Elena leaned back, arms folded, her initial fury giving way to reluctant admiration as the deal progressed smoothly, the tension easing with each exchanged phrase, until finally, after hours of back and forth on valuation metrics and ROI projections, Mr. Li extended his hand, agreeing to the $30 million infusion with a firm handshake, the room erupting in restrained applause, shoulders slumping in relief as the specter of bankruptcy faded. Aisha stepped back, exhausted but exhilarated, her mother bursting into the room moments later, having been alerted by Jamal, her face pale with worry but beaming with pride as she enveloped her daughter in a hug, whispering, "You were amazing, Maya." Elena approached, kneeling to Aisha's level. "Young lady, you just saved this company and all our jobs. What's your secret?" Aisha shrugged modestly. "I listen a lot, and languages are like puzzles. Once you see the pattern, it clicks." Word spread quickly through the office corridors, staff peeking in with awe, some snapping discreet photos that would later leak online, turning Aisha into an overnight sensation on social media, hashtags like #KidTranslatorHero trending as videos of the meeting's aftermath circulated. But amid the praise came shadows. Anonymous posts on forums questioning how a janitor's daughter accessed sensitive info, insinuations of staged publicity stunts by rivals eager to undermine Technova's resurgence, and even a shadowy figure lingering outside the building, watching as Jamal and Maria escorted Aisha home through the twilight streets lined with cable cars and street artists. That night, as Aisha lay in bed replaying the day's events, Her phone buzzed with unknown notifications, harmless at first, but laced with veiled threats like, "Stay out of grown-up games," igniting a flicker of unease. The next morning, while helping her father pack his lunch, a mysterious call came through on Maria's phone, a voice on the other end saying cryptically, "We've been watching Aisha. She needs protection from what's coming. Meet us at the lighthouse in Golden Gate Park tomorrow at dawn. Come alone." Maria's hand trembled as she hung up, exchanging a worried glance with Jamal. But Aisha, overhearing, felt a spark of determination ignite within her. This was no end to her adventure, but the beginning of something far larger, a web of intrigue that would test her wits and courage in ways she could scarcely imagine, drawing her into the clandestine world of the Lighthouse Network, a secret alliance of truth-seekers dedicated to combating the dark underbelly of the tech industry's disinformation machine. As the family sat down to dinner, the city lights twinkling outside their window like distant stars, Aisha pondered the call, her mind already translating the possibilities, unaware that her act of bravery had poked a hornet's nest of corporate espionage, where competitors lurked in the shadows, plotting to discredit her and dismantle Technova from within. The Lighthouse Network, founded by disillusioned former tech insiders who had witnessed the erosion of ethics in Silicon Valley, specialized in safeguarding whistleblowers and prodigies like Aisha, offering training in digital literacy and counterintelligence to arm them against the rising tide of fake news and smear campaigns that plagued the industry. Little did Aisha know, as she drifted to sleep that night with dreams of code and conversations swirling in her head, that accepting this invitation would propel her from a quiet life of books and podcasts into a high-stakes battle for truth, where her languages would become weapons, and her innocence a shield against the cynicism of power brokers who viewed children like her as threats to their carefully curated narratives. The dawn meeting loomed, promising revelations that would peel back the layers of deception, revealing how the $30 million deal she saved was just a pawn in a larger game of global tech dominance, with strings pulled by invisible hands eager to silence any voice that dared to speak out. In the quiet hours before sunrise, San Francisco slept. But Aisha's world was awakening to chaos and opportunity, her small shoulders bearing the weight of a revolution she never sought, but could no longer avoid. As the first rays of dawn pierced the misty veil over Golden Gate Park, casting long shadows across the dew-kissed grass and the iconic lighthouse that stood sentinel by the ocean's edge, Aisha Thompson arrived with her mother Maria in tow, their footsteps crunching softly on the gravel path, hearts racing with a mix of trepidation and resolve after the mysterious call that had promised protection but hinted at unseen dangers lurking in the wake of her boardroom triumph. The Lighthouse Network, as they soon learned, was no ordinary group. Concealed within a nondescript van parked discreetly near the lighthouse's base, it was a clandestine alliance of former tech whistleblowers, journalists, and experts who had banded together to combat the insidious spread of disinformation in Silicon Valley's cutthroat ecosystem, where innovation often masked manipulation and truth was a commodity traded in the shadows of algorithms. Dr. Kai Lin, a wiry man in his 50s with sharp eyes hidden behind rimless glasses and a background as a cybersecurity specialist who had defected from a major firm after exposing internal data harvesting scandals, greeted them first, his voice low and reassuring as he explained how Aisha's viral moment had painted a target on her back, drawing the ire of rival companies jealous of Technova's resurgence and eager to bury her story under layers of fabricated doubt. Beside him stood Sophia Reyes, a warm yet intense media psychologist in her 40s, her curly hair tied back and her notebook filled with insights on how narratives shape perceptions, drawing from her own experiences, counseling victims of online harassment. Together, they outlined a training program tailored for Aisha, not to turn her into a spy, but to equip her with the tools to navigate the digital battlefield, where facts twisted like code in a glitchy program. Maria hesitated at first, her protective instincts flaring as she clutched Aisha's hand, but seeing the fire in her daughter's eyes, the same unyielding curiosity that had led her to master languages and tech jargon, she relented, agreeing to let Aisha begin sessions in a hidden safe house in the hills of Oakland, a converted warehouse stocked with encrypted laptops, whiteboards scrawled with flowcharts of bot networks, and virtual reality setups for simulating media storms. From day one, the training was intense, blending intellectual rigor with practical drills that pushed Aisha beyond her comfort zone. Dr. Kai started with cybersecurity basics, teaching her to spot phishing attempts and trace IP addresses using open-source tools like Wireshark simulations, explaining how disinformation networks operated through shadow web, a covert consortium funded by behemoths like shadowy venture capitalists and overseas conglomerates, designed to suppress stories that threatened their monopolies on AI patents by flooding social media with automated bots that amplified lies while burying truths under avalanches of noise. Aisha absorbed it all like a sponge, her young mind connecting the dots between her boardroom translation and the broader implications, how the $30 million deal she saved involved AI tech that could democratize access to education in underserved communities, something rivals wanted to control exclusively for profit, leading them to launch subtle smears, labeling her as a staged child actor or corporate plant on platforms like Reddit and Twitter, where anonymous accounts with suspiciously similar phrasing popped up overnight. Sophia complemented Kai's lessons with psychological warfare tactics, guiding Aisha through exercises on detecting deepfakes, those eerily realistic videos generated by AI that could fabricate her, saying damaging things using software to analyze pixel anomalies and voice modulations, while role-playing scenarios where Aisha had to craft responses to hostile interviewers, learning to redirect questions with poise and evidence, turning potential traps into opportunities to highlight the manipulator's tactics. "Remember," Sophia would say, her voice steady as they dissected a fake news article claiming Aisha had faked her language skills. "The goal isn't to win arguments. It's to reveal the patterns, show how they sow doubt to distract from their own greed." As weeks blurred into a routine of early mornings hacking mock networks and afternoons debating ethics in dimly lit rooms, Aisha formed bonds with her mentors, sharing stories over herbal tea. Kai, recounting his escape from corporate retaliation that cost him his family home, Sophia opening up about treating teens scarred by cyberbullying and even recruiting allies from diverse backgrounds, like Raj Patel, a young Indian-American programmer who had been fired from a rival firm for exposing data theft in AI training datasets, now volunteering to teach Aisha about algorithmic biases that amplified racist narratives online. Together, they uncovered threads of the shadow web's operations, encrypted emails leaked through anonymous tips revealing how these networks paid influencers to post skeptical threads about Technova's deal, using bots to boost visibility until mainstream media picked up the controversy, all while monitoring Aisha's online footprint through sophisticated tracking cookies embedded in viral videos of her heroism. The personal challenges mounted. Aisha faced her first online smear when a deepfake video surfaced on YouTube, showing her admitting the translation was scripted, garnering thousands of views before she and Kai traced it back to a server farm in Eastern Europe, likely hired by proxies of the shadow web, forcing her to stay off social media and use VPNs for every search, her once carefree afternoons now shadowed by paranoia as strange cars idled outside their apartment, prompting Maria to install extra locks and Jamal to vary his work routes. Yet amid the fear, Aisha found empowerment, creating her first rebuttal video in the safe house, a simple smartphone recording where she spoke directly to the camera in English, Mandarin, and Spanish, debunking the deepfake by demonstrating live translations of complex AI terms, overlaying evidence of pixel glitches, and calling out the tactics used to discredit young voices, especially those from Black and immigrant families like hers. Uploaded anonymously through encrypted channels, the video exploded virally, amassing millions of views as supporters rallied with hashtags like #TruthFromAisha, drawing messages from other victims. A Latina engineer silenced after reporting gender bias in AI hiring algorithms, an African developer blacklisted for exposing surveillance tech sold to authoritarian regimes. Buoyed by this, Aisha launched Echoes Unheard, a podcast recorded in the warehouse's soundproof booth, where she interviewed whistleblowers like Raj, who detailed how he was fired for revealing data theft that funneled user information to shadow web affiliates. His story interwoven with Aisha's insights on how language barriers in tech excluded diverse talents, turning the episodes into beacons for the overlooked. The podcast gained traction quickly, downloaded by tech enthusiasts and activists alike, but success invited retaliation. One evening, as Aisha wrapped an episode with a guest, a former marketer who had quit after being ordered to spread misinformation about competing AI ethics initiatives, alarms blared on Kai's monitors, signaling a distributed denial-of-service attack flooding their servers with junk data from thousands of compromised devices, orchestrated by shadow web bots to crash the platform and erase episodes mid-upload. Chaos ensued in the safe house, lights flickering as Sophia guided Aisha through emergency protocols, backing up files to decentralized clouds while Kai countered with firewalls. But the assault exposed vulnerabilities, including a leaked IP that led hackers to dox Aisha's family address online, prompting an urgent relocation to a secondary site in Berkeley. In the aftermath, as they huddled over laptops piecing together the attack's origins traced to a consortium linked to Marcus Hale, an elusive executive rumored to head Shadow Web's operations, Aisha felt a surge of defiance. Vowing to upgrade their tactics by building a wider alliance, recruiting more whistleblowers through encrypted forums, and planning a counteroffensive that would expose the network's underbelly. Evading digital surveillance became second nature. Aisha learned to use burner phones for secret meetings, like one in a foggy alley behind a Mission District taqueria, where she met Elena Vargas incognito, the CEO slipping her internal Technova files, hinting at sabotage attempts predating the deal, solidifying Aisha's role not just as a survivor but as a strategist in this unseen war. Personal tolls weighed heavy nights where Maria worried aloud about safety. Jamal's job hanging by a thread amid office whispers, but alliances blossomed, with Sophia introducing Aisha to a global chat group of young prodigies facing similar threats, from a Kenyan teen coder battling fake news on election tech to a Brazilian girl exposing environmental data manipulation in AI-driven mining ops. As the chapter of training deepened, Aisha's first major breakthrough came during a late-night session analyzing bot patterns. She spotted a recurring code signature in the smears against her, linking it to Shadow Web's funding trails through shell companies in the Caymans, evidence that would fuel her podcast's explosive growth and set the stage for bolder moves. Yet the cyber attack lingered as a warning, forcing Aisha to evolve her approach, integrating AI tools of her own design, simple scripts to detect anomalies in social media trends, and ending the phase with a resolve to go public, transforming Echoes Unheard into a weapon that amplified not just her voice, but the chorus of those the shadows sought to silence. All while the city of San Francisco pulsed onward, its bridges and bays a metaphor for the connections she was forging in the face of division. As the momentum from Echoes Unheard surged like a digital tidal wave across the globe, rippling through forums, news feeds, and policy discussions from Silicon Valley to Brussels, Aisha Thompson found herself at the helm of something far greater than personal survival, a movement that transcended her boardroom heroism and the shadowy skirmishes of online warfare, evolving into a force capable of reshaping the ethical landscape of technology itself. With the podcast's revelations about the shadow web's manipulations gaining traction, exposing how these networks not only smeared individuals, but also influenced AI regulations to favor corporate giants at the expense of privacy and equity, Aisha channeled her growing influence into launching the Digital Dawn Initiative, a groundbreaking global conference designed not as a mere gathering of experts, but as a public reckoning where technologists, policymakers, ethicists, and everyday users could converge to dismantle the veil of secrecy shrouding the industry. Held in the expansive halls of San Francisco's Moscone Center, overlooking the bay where ferries cut through the water like symbols of connectivity. The event drew thousands in person and millions online, with live streams translated in real time into multiple languages thanks to Aisha's network of volunteer linguists, ensuring accessibility for voices from underrepresented regions like Southeast Asia and Latin America, where AI exploitation in labor markets had silenced workers for years. Aisha, now 11 but carrying the poise of someone twice her age, stood at the forefront, not as a figurehead but as a curator, meticulously organizing panels on topics like AI and human rights. Beyond the code, where survivors of data breaches shared harrowing tales of identity theft engineered by shadow web affiliates and policy in the age of algorithms, featuring lawmakers debating reforms to curb monopolistic practices that stifled innovation from diverse creators. The conference's keynote, delivered by Aisha herself under the glaring spotlights amid a sea of attentive faces, wove her personal journey into a broader call to action, emphasizing how her translation of a single deal had unveiled a system rigged against the young, the marginalized, and the truthful, urging attendees to build bridges of code that unite rather than divide, turning shadows into spotlights for all. Governments took notice. Representatives from the European Union's AI Act Committee and the U.S. Federal Trade Commission mingled in the corridors, jotting notes during sessions that highlighted evidence from anonymous sources, leaked memos, and whistleblower testimonies compiled by Dr. Kai and Sophia detailing how Shadow Web had lobbied against transparency laws to protect their data-hoarding empires. Media swarmed the event, with outlets like Wired and The Guardian live blogging revelations that sparked viral debates. But the true climax unfolded in a surprise public hearing on AI ethics, convened on the conference's final day in a packed auditorium converted into a makeshift congressional forum where Aisha directly confronted Marcus Hale, the enigmatic executive long suspected of orchestrating Shadow Web's operations from his perch at a conglomerate disguised as a neutral think tank. Hale, a silver-haired man in a bespoke suit exuding calculated charm, took the stand first, deflecting accusations with polished rhetoric about fostering innovation and dismissing smears as baseless conspiracy, but Aisha, seated at the witness table with her mentors flanking her like guardians, waited her turn, armed with a dossier of irrefutable evidence gathered from global allies, encrypted chat logs from defectors showing Hale's directives to deploy deepfakes against critics, financial trails linking his firm to bot farms that amplified division during elections, and even audio clips of him boasting in private about controlling the narrative to own the future. When her moment came, Aisha spoke with unwavering clarity, her voice echoing through the speakers as she dissected Hale's defenses point by point, using simple analogies like comparing AI manipulation to a rigged game where only the house wins to make complex issues relatable, then unleashing the bombshell. Anonymous sources, including a former aide to Hale who had flipped after listening to Echoes Unheard, provided timestamps and metadata proving his involvement in campaigns that targeted not just her, but indigenous communities protesting AI-driven deforestation in the Amazon. The room gasped as Aisha projected visuals on the screen graphs of influence networks, victim testimonies scrolling like credits in a film lighting the narrative on its head, forcing Hale to stammer through denials that rang hollow under cross-examination from panelists, culminating in his abrupt exit amid boos and flashes from photographers. The aftermath was electric. Within hours, social media erupted with calls for accountability, hashtags like #DawnOfTruth trending worldwide as governments announced investigations, the FTC launching probes into antitrust violations tied to Shadow Web, while the EU fast-tracked amendments to data protection laws mandating transparency in AI training datasets, reforms that echoed Aisha's advocacy for equitable access to tech education. Scholarships blossomed in her wake, funded by philanthropists, inspired by the conference. Programs for children in underfunded schools to learn digital languages like coding and cybersecurity, with Aisha personally endorsing initiatives in her old Mission District neighborhood, where she began teaching weekend community classes at the local library, guiding kids through basic encryption exercises and storytelling sessions on how to spot misinformation in their feeds. Balancing this public role with personal growth proved challenging. Aisha navigated the glare of fame by grounding herself in family rituals, cooking traditional Mexican meals with Maria, helping Jamal with home repairs, and even returning to Technova for a shadow day with Elena Vargas, who had implemented internal ethics audits post-deal, crediting Aisha's influence for steering the company toward responsible AI development that prioritized community impact over pure profit. Yet the victories came with lingering echoes of resistance. Hale's network didn't vanish overnight, spawning splinter groups that attempted subtler tactics like lobbying against the new laws or funding counter-conferences peddling balanced views on tech freedom. But Aisha's legacy endured through the ripples. She created a young Filipino activist, citing her podcast as inspiration to expose surveillance in Manila's smart cities, or a group of African teens forming coding clubs to counter election deepfakes. In quieter moments, Aisha reflected on her evolution, journaling in a notebook now filled with not just vocabulary but policy sketches and alliance maps, recognizing that her voice had amplified a chorus, fostering a generation unafraid to code their own futures. The chapter culminated in a poignant scene at one of her community classes, where Aisha gathered a diverse group of kids around a shared laptop, challenging them to build a simple app that fact-checks news headlines, watching their faces light up with discovery as one boy, echoing her own origins, declared, "If a janitor's daughter can save a company, we can save the world," symbolizing the ongoing cycle of empowerment where truth didn't merely salvage deals or deflect shadows, but ignited beacons for tomorrow, ensuring that in the ever-evolving tapestry of technology, voices like hers, young, bold, and unbreakable, would forever illuminate the path forward, a testament to how one act of courage could cascade into a symphony of change that resonated far beyond the confines of boardrooms or screens.